Last week on Magic Carpet, we opened up the bow.
Oh!
We made a new breast hook.
Wow, it's even custom fit to the shape of the duct tape.
We made a new kind of laminating jig after our old one warped.
Ta-da! Well, they're all screwed down.
And then we laminated a new beam that will replace one of the rotten ones up at the bow.
This should be fully cured.
Although it looks dramatic, I've been pleasantly surprised so far at how quickly everything has moved along. Aladino brought the new breast hook to life in one long evening.
Wow, look at that custom fit.
Our new laminating jig took about 20 minutes to make, and as for the beams themselves, we're now pretty well practiced with those. So we had high hopes about finishing up the remaining beams at the bow, and maybe even having some spare time for other things along the way. Hello everyone, welcome back to Magic Carpet where the refit continues. In the last episode, Aladino made a new breast hook and a new beam, which is ready to be fitted into the boat. Well, almost ready. There's one final step, and that is cleaning up the excess epoxy that was left over from the laminating process. So one thing that we've started doing, which works pretty well, is putting a bit of tape here on the bottom, but I find that I still have to use the heat gun to take the tape and the epoxy on it off. If you just rip the tape off, it'll definitely rip the tape. When we were using the jig, because the beam was standing up vertically, there was no way for epoxy to get on the top, so I didn't really have to do much cleaning ever on the top. But now with this new process, there is quite a bit on the top. So I think next time we make a beam on this horizontal jig, we will tape both the bottom and the top to make cleanup easier.
Yeah, cool. You learn lessons each time, and each time needs something a little bit custom.
Mm-hmm, absolutely.
Yeah. And please, big applause from everyone. I want to add here that Maya is doing 2 full-time jobs at the moment. It is very precious help I'm getting in the workshop. Without Maya, no videos. And without Maya, no help in the workshop. So yeah, it is pretty incredible to have your help. Thank you.
That's so nice.
So yeah, I know
made me really happy.
I know often you're doing tedious, boring jobs. You are sanding and buffing and...
Oh, I'm gonna cry.
Don't cry. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just you're doing an excellent job. This is really awesome.
Thanks.
And I couldn't do it without you. Also because many of you guys just think that I am the one with the skills and the one working, and that is not true. Maya is doing equal amounts of work. Sometimes I am the one who knows how to approach it, or how to approach it. That's the way how to say it. But then Maya has her both hands in the projects as well.
I'm gonna cry. Thanks. All right, first beam done. So there's only one beam left to make for this front section, and Aladino's just getting started on that one right now.
Good enough. I don't know why that came to mind. I saw it somewhere. People use it abbreviated here, don't they?
Good enough. I feel like that's the motto for a lot of work that's done around here.
Oh no, I should use it then. Perfect. Et voilà, les jus sont faits. Is that better?
Hey Aladino, why do we always wear earmuffs even for silent tasks?
Because we're listening to tunes. It seems quiet, but it is actually quite bumping.
There's a whole party going on.
Yeah.
We do have Bluetooth earmuffs.
One thing that motivates me greatly is not only caffeine and sugar, but it's
Healthy habits.
electronic music. And that just keeps me awake and keeps me powered and working. I love jazz, I love R&B, but it's for a different situation. When you just have to grind at things or just be sanding, do those repetitive tasks where you're sweating. There is not much that beats trance or progressive or some good house music.
Yeah, so clearly Aladino and I literally couldn't agree less on music, which is why we often have headphones on, because having agreed upon music for the workshop is not an easy task. And the other reason why actually is that when we record video for YouTube, if we do have music playing in the background that's copyrighted, that ends up being a big problem. So having our own personal music that's playing silently is actually quite advantageous for that as well. There you go, that's why. I know people ask, why do you always wear earmuffs? That's why. We've got fun earmuffs. While Aladino worked on the new beam, I had another little project on the go. I have with me here today a witch's cauldron, and it is full of water and borax. Borax is supposed to be a miracle cure for preventing against rot. It's a more or less non-toxic, I say more or less because it's not toxic to humans, but it is toxic to bugs, so more or less non-toxic solution that you can dissolve in water and paint onto wood, let it absorb and dry, and it basically kills the little organisms that are responsible for causing rot. So the reason why we're using this today is to paint the ends of the beams up at the bow of our boat. We have done this with all of the other beams on the boat so far, but since we haven't really been working on the bow before now, we're just now getting to that. Now, the idea with this is that you paint it on and you allow the water to work its way into the wood, carrying the borax with it. So once the wood has dried out, we will paint it over with epoxy, and it should be good to go for years into the future. All right, there we go. Let it dry out now, and then continue on to the next step.
All right, moving forward, here's the second beam. Next step is fitting it into its gap, of course.
Aladino used a template piece to get the angle just right, climbing up and down from the boat multiple times until it fit.
Now this should be fairly close. Pretty nice. Just some finishing touches. It's touching somewhere here, so I have to round over this edge here. But it is parallel to the hull. There is a gap, but it is parallel, so
Well, and the hull
means
is
it's
not
good.
perfectly flat, right? So it's impossible
exactly.
to get.
This is as close as it gets.
Lastly, Aladino had to measure the overall length so he could cut the new beam to the right size and with the right angles.
This should be about 1 inch too long now, but let's go up there just to get the confirmations and see if we're approaching correctly. No! It seems like it's too short, but it's not.
We couldn't fit the beam in place properly because the king plank was protruding out. Since we had to scarf in a new piece of king plank anyway, we decided to just cut away this protruding section so we could put our beam in place. Not that much too big though.
I'm looking from this corner where this should sit, this corner should sit, and then I'm taking this measurement here, the distance that I have.
Wow! Perfect!
Good for doing baby steps. But yeah, quite accurate. I mean, I went almost to the mark.
This is so great.
And now, the next thing that we can see, I don't know if you guys can, but the beam should come to exactly the height of where we have routed out the bulkhead. This is bulkhead, this is king plank. So this one is still standing 2 millimeters proud, I don't know, a few sixteenths. So the next step is either to take a hand plane and plane down these 2 millimeters, or we can also take them off from the bottom here and then it will lower itself.
Oh yeah, I see what you mean.
And once we have that, we can mark where the king plank will be. And then we can make the cutout, but we wait for that until we get the wood for the king plank, which is coming this week, next week, this week.
Awesome. But in the meantime, there's always other things to do. Aladino started tinkering with some more ideas for the chain locker, and I cracked open my fiddle case.
I just helped Aladino with some beams. Now he's doing other things and doesn't need my help. So I'm sitting here, I'm playing some tunes. Okay, what am I gonna start with?
If there's one thing this refit has taught me, it's the need for balance. A balance between work and play. A balance between boat work and video work. A balance between online communications and real-life communications. A balance between living for the future and living for the present. We don't always strike the right balance. Perhaps we even seldom strike the right balance. But all we can do is try. As I played the fiddle in our deconstructed cockpit, Aladino thought about the slope for the chain in our chain locker. The chain locker, like many other projects, is ongoing. We've found a method that works, but now we have to build it all out, crafting each component, weighing pros and cons of materials, design, cost, and time. This process usually starts with some templates, cut out of cardboard, just something temporary to give a visual idea of what could be. The decisions are probably the hardest part of this whole refit. Deciding what is best, what makes most sense, where to spend our time and money the most effectively. Once a decision has been reached, then it's so much easier to get on with it, to cut and sand and paint until it's done. But it's those little decisions that take up the most time and energy, and they usually happen off camera during long conversations in the evening and scribbled diagrams at breakfast. There's endless information available, and that's almost part of the problem. With some exceptions, these decisions almost never have a right or wrong answer. There are just endless options, all with various enticements and pitfalls.
That is a set of jigs. Woo! Thanks, Dean. What's the difference between a jig and a reel, some of you might ask? It's all about the timing, the time signature. So a jig is in 6/8 time, and if you can tell if something's in 6/8 time by, first of all, you can kind of count to 6 while it's playing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Or you can say the words jiggity, 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 jiggity. And if that sort of fits in with the rhythm of the tune, it's probably a jig. And I certainly don't only play Celtic music, so here is some kind of bluesy swing to even things out a little bit. Thanks, amore.
So after a lot of trial and error here, we have come up with a solution, and maybe you haven't really seen it when we were testing, but basically this part is our slope, which will be installed here, and it comes to about here. and it's curved. It's hard to do now because if I push it against the hull, the cardboard templates will fall off. But this is part number 1, which I call the slope, and then instead this one here is the template for the bottom, where the chain will ultimately collect. So these are also just templates, and there's many ways I could approach this. I could make these out of fiberglass, so then there would be no worry about moisture. But for the sake of simplicity, and this is all for now, I call it prototype chain locker. I'm just going ahead and doing it out of plywood. I know plywood can rot, but that's why I've added sort of like limber holes here, so the water can still flow, and I will, well, epoxy and fiberglass them. And if they were to ever rot or fail, then it is not a big deal, because I should be able to get there, make new ones, and they should still last a considerable amount of time. And the pro, instead of why making plywood, it's really easy. I can make those in 15 minutes on the bench. And yeah, I want to move forward and get some progress.
Well, and also, the majority of water coming in here is going to be salt water, which is actually a wood preservative.
That is true about the preservative, but most water that collects in boats is fresh water, because it comes from above, and that's like rain.
Yeah, but this is all coming from the anchor locker.
Yeah, but also rain can come down here.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit of both.
Mm-hmm.
And this one here, let's see if I can squeeze it in place, but it might just fall off. And then this partition here will have the tube at the very bottom, so everything that collects here will then go into our bilge.
And so another episode comes to a close. There's many projects still on the go happening up in the bow vicinity. But now we have to wait for the wood to arrive to create our king plank. And there's always things going on in the anchor locker. That's a continuing story as well. So we will be back next week with more updates about the anchor locker and the deck and the beams and the king plank and all of those projects happening up there. But for now, we will say goodbye and we will say thank you. Thank you for watching. Thank you for leaving a thumbs up. Thank you for subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. And thank you for your comments. And of course, an extra big thank you to our patrons who always make sure that our episodes keep being produced. We really, really appreciate their support. And I would be remiss to not say thank you to these folks whose names are now appearing on screen. These folks always go the extra mile to make sure that our episodes keep being produced. We'll see you all next Friday.